one step forward, one step back. On a really good sun, then it could be 15.
So together, possible 20.
Anytime we get together, it's good.
All right, well, that's a little brief.
Thank you. Appreciate it. As always, I certainly appreciate that effort. That's tedious.
I'll let you know.
Lots of time and let me know when you have meetings to do.
There's something about what you say, it's because I believe it.
Take it
Solve
all
any
now.
problem.
It's gonna take a little time to get set.
That's okay. Take your time. There's some good days yet.
I am so sorry, I didn't appreciate it 2 months.
Hey, you need a break, buddy.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
We don't have anything.
I heard it.
It's a bit smart guy.
Good morning, Margaret.
He's working this guy.
Good morning.
Hey,
Is
Margaret.
this fish day? Is it fish day?
This is fish day,
This is fish.
which I totally forgot. I'm glad you reminded me. Oh, yes, more egg cartons, good.
You might get a little shit on it.
Yes, let
That's
me
okay.
put that down. I'll forget again.
82. Must have told me 82. Hey, sweetheart, good to see you. Molly.
Margaret, the correct title. Derek's sermon is here at the top. I had it on my broadcast. I did use it earlier.
Yeah.
So I think everything else is correct. Sure. Did you want to all right. Presentation and everything. Everything is
Okay, welcome to First Universalist Church of New Madison. If I start whispering, remind me to speak up. One of our things that we're talking about is getting speakers compatible with our sound system so people can hear. I don't really want them to sit in the very back pew, but some people are having trouble hearing even in the second and third, so we're working on that. Do we have any announcements?
The announcement, I got a card. I want to make a lecture, ask everyone to sign for Jeanette Burns. I'll pick it up on Tuesday when I go to Greenville, but I have that in the back. So after service today, please remember to sign. Put a little message in there if you like. And then next week, hopefully, I'll be able to provide you with at least a little more reporting, I guess, on Jeanette.
All right, and I have an update on that. I called Gordon. He didn't answer his phone, so I called Friendship Village. She said Gordon's still out walking a lot. And I said, why does he take his phone in case he falls? And she laughed. So I'm going to try and get a hold of Gordon again. If not, I'm going to Dayton anyway. I'm going to stop and see Gordon because I know he's up and around. My thought was we might consider this for Jeanette. After church, either this Sunday or next Sunday, if you want to video yourself on my phone saying hi to Gordon, when I go down there, I'll play the video for him so he can see the people that he knows, just say hi or how you doing or hope you're doing well or just some kind of a greeting rather than give him a card. I mean, we're living in the electronic age. We might actually take advantage of that and try and do that. So we can do the same thing. If Mike wants to use his phone, we can all either as a group say hi, Jeanette, or whatever, or do individual greetings for Jeanette. We can give that a try and see how it works. Other announcements, did you talk to Kenny about the court Carillon?
Yeah.
Are we going to do that? Okay. Our neighbor goes to work at like 3 in the morning and the Carillon wakes him up at 9 at night because he goes to bed early. I think we're pretty much in agreement that as good neighborly policy, we don't need to have the Carillon playing at 9 o'clock at night. We can either turn the volume down if that's possible or just canceled the 9 o'clock play, because the daytime play is what most people are listening to. Let's see. Oh, the other thing I wanted to throw in was, when we talked last week or the week before that about epiphanies, I have another, if anybody has any, please, feel free to share them with me, or share them with everyone, but I had another epiphany. My horse, I have like a 30-gallon tank up at the top of the hill that I fill with a garden hose, and so he can drink, and the horse was drinking like 30 gallons a day. I'd go up in the morning and the tank would be empty, and I'm thinking, man, that horse, I know it's hot, but he is really drinking a lot of water. So I put a float on it, so it fill and unfill, and the float has a thing that closes it off. My epiphany was, it turns out my garden hose had a little split in it about halfway down the hill. And when I turned when the horse went in, the water just siphoned right out of the tank and drained out onto the hill. So for like, I don't know, a month, I've been like watering the grass at the top of the hill with 30 gallons of water every night.
Grass.
So my epiphany was, get a new garden hose, or don't put the, if you put the hose at the bottom of the tank, it'll siphon all the way to the bottom. If you clamp the hose at the top, when the water goes down, the siphon will end. So, epiphany again. Okay, we're going to change order a little bit. I want to have a moment of silence, and I'm going to ring our little gong, because I want you to center yourself, because we have an announcement here. I'm sure most of you know Sarah. They took her off life support Thursday. She continues to breathe, continues to fight on her own, but she is in a vegetative state and has been moved to hospice in Richmond. This nice young woman, canine handler for 4 years with her dog, just married. A senseless person with a senseless gun has destroyed more than one life. All right, we are on, and this is Sarah. Labor Day is what we're going to talk about this week. Derek is here and has some thoughts on biblical labors, everyday labors, and we always enjoy what Derek has to give us. So let's proceed with the prelude, September Song. Very appropriate. Our chalice lighting is 429 in the back of your hymnal. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power, and let its vision change your heart, by William Schultz. Our opening hymn is 355. Affirmation is 657. Always like it when Derek comes because everything's out of the book. You only got one short page to follow through. It matters what we believe. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged. Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies. Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities. Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness. Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies. Other beliefs are bonds in the world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern. Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction. Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide resistance for exploration. Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness. Other beliefs nurture self-confidence, enrich the feeling of personal worth. Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world. Other beliefs are pliable, like the young sapling, ever growing with the upward thrust of life. Sophia Lyon Bottoms. Be like the sapling. All right. The children's story. Our Labor Day tradition goes on. I wanted to show you these. United we bargain, divided we beg. If you're a union person, that makes sense to you. And union labor built the American dream. There was a sign in the Democratic tent at the fair. Social Security, there's like 20 things that have all been listed. The 8-hour day, the 40-hour week, all those came from organized labor. They weren't just given to us by rich people. Well, they were taken by laboring people from rich people. This is example of what that used to be in the 20s, 30s, and the 1800s, little kids working on dangerous machines. And here's our Labor Day. And we'll see if it comes up. Labor Day has a long history in the United States. It was fought for starting in the 1800s. We think about the violence that goes on now. If anybody remembers the Haymarket explosion in Chicago, there was an actual march by laborers trying to get their rights established. There was an explosion. Nobody knows whether there was an anarchist, which was a group of people, kind of like when you see the Black Lives Matter people out today, and people tell you how violent they were and how they were trying to destroy the country. There were like some 900 Black Lives Matter demonstrations all over the country. 5, 10, maybe 15 had some violence involved in them. And the people involved in the violence were not necessarily the Black Lives people, the demonstrators. The demonstration leaders were always calling for peace and freedom and a peaceful demonstration. And some of these people who are akin to the anarchists want to stir up trouble. The Republicans or the conservatives call it a false flag, where somebody from your own side, the Russians use this a lot. The Russians now in Ukraine are saying that the Ukrainians killed their own prisoners because they wanted to shut somebody up. The Russians are saying the Ukrainians are bombing their own electricity plant, the nuclear plant. It does not make any sense to anybody, but this is what they claim. The same thing happened with the anarchists in the Haymarket explosion. And this was in the late 1800s. They actually executed 5 people, 5 labor leaders from that thing, as accusing them in basically what you would call a kangaroo trial, that they had planted the bomb, that they knew about the bomb, that they intentionally had set off the bomb. All this was proved, or at least the investigation that an honest, neutral person did later indicated that none of this was true. They have no idea who actually set the bomb off, but it definitely was not the labor leaders. So people actually died for some of the things that we have today. It looks like this is not going to be.
Hey kid, and welcome to your special Labor Day edition of Kid Time Story Time. This is a holiday story that celebrates how I'm so good at casting evil spells. No, my labors, mixing cauldrons of toxic soup that just smelled dry. No, not that. Flogging your minions. No, it's not that kind of holiday. I don't like this holiday. What do I hear? Well, there goes Maleficent. Well, let's see what Labor Day labors really are celebrated, shall we? And why we celebrate labor to begin with. Here we go. Labor Day honors American workers. Workers make our nation strong. See, we've got folks dressed up here. It says a crossing guard, I think, of some kind. No, construction worker. Construction worker. And crossing guards also wear those colors. Cowgirl, we got a chef, we got a little mini doctor here, we got a little mini firefighter here. The history. People worked very long days in the 1800s. Even children worked. It was a hard life. And this isn't a staged photo, meaning a make-believe photo or a picture from a movie. This is from real life. Back then, even little kids worked. They got pulled out of school. They didn't get to learn because they had to work. The first U.S. Labor Day celebration was in 1882. It was in New York City. See, there's a parade there. You can see some of these buildings are still there right now. Labor Day was meant to give workers a voice, because back then, they were kind of what we like to call voiceless. Nobody listened to their cares or concerns. Workers decided to join together. They wanted better working conditions. They wanted rights. What do you mean by conditions? Well, sometimes where they worked were dangerous plants where they could get hurt, they would lose fingers or limbs, get burns. And conditions also meant that they were made to work very, very long hours, no days off. They wanted rights. to, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not just working 24/7. New York City celebrated year after year. Workers marched in parades. Working conditions kept getting better. And that meant that they started to give people time off. They started to give people benefits. They started to prohibit children from working. Oregon, the state of Oregon, made Labor Day a holiday in 1887. That was the very first state to do that. Yay, Oregon. On June 28, 1894, Labor Day became a national holiday because of this guy right here. President Grover Cleveland signed it into law. And that could be easy to remember because he's the only president that I'm aware of who also shares a name with a Muppet. Today is Labor Day. We celebrate Labor Day on the first Monday in September. Workers enjoy a day off from work. And like this family, these decided to spend their Labor Day in a picnic at the park. Many countries observe a similar holiday, actually. We're not the only ones, but they don't necessarily call it Labor Day. They sometimes call it Workers' Day. And in a lot of places, they celebrate that holiday on May the 1st. More facts. A long time ago, workers were paid very little and worked very long days, even small children. You don't see that anymore, do you? When's the last time you put in a long day at the factory? Originally, Labor Day was used as a day to discuss plans for better working conditions. And today, Labor Day is a day for workers to relax and feel appreciated for all their labors, like evoking dangerous dark spells. No, not that labor. For burning pump.
I don't know where the Melissa thing came from.
Hey kid, and welcome.
Okay, joys and concerns.
We want to wish Roberta, who's not here obviously today, a great holiday in Saugatuck with her
Yes.
family. I think for the next 8 days or so.
At the lake, where she and Dave used to go all the time.
And boat.
Yeah, and a boat. They had a lot of favorite memories, a lot of good memories from there. So hopefully the family is together and things are going well. Right, we still have our sunflowers. We still want to remember Ukraine for all the problems going on there. It's not getting better, it's actually getting worse, if that is actually possible. And with the nuclear plant, nuclear electricity generating plant, if that goes down, then we're all in a soup, so to speak. We still want to remember, I don't know why this hits me so hard. She was a nice person from everything I've heard. Everybody who worked with her really liked her, and just no excuse. I mean, she came up with her dog to sniff and see if there was any drugs, and the guy pulled out a gun and shot her in the head. I mean, it's just senseless. All right. Yes.
Two concerns. One for my husband, who is dealing with a lot of back pain right now. It's still persisting from Tuesday. There's going to be a doctor's appointment, but it's bad enough that he can't even bend over to tie a shoe,
Oh, man.
which feels rotten without stuff. The second concern is a bigger concern in my family. A number of you have heard me mention my mom's sister, Kay, who lives in Illinois. A couple of weeks ago, Kay entered into at-home hospice. Or there's no treatment options left for her cancer. My mom this past week made an emergency trip down to Illinois, which is not exactly easy for my mother physically at this point. Mom didn't say so much, but I think we're approaching the end. I talked to Kay on Tuesday this past week, and she did say something to me about how she's not eating anymore. And when I've seen that as a pastor, usually that's meant that the person's approaching death. My mom, her name's Joyce, her sister Kay, and the rest of that side of the family.
Our hearts and minds are with Kay, and some people don't understand and some people don't believe it, but people actually choose to stop eating. It is a way that you can come to a peaceful end, no pain. When you just get tired of fighting, tired of suffering, tired of bearing up under everything you're doing, the one thing you can do, if you stop drinking, dying by thirst is a very painful death. Dying by starvation is not painful. That's what I've been told, and that's what we were taught in school. So it is very common to happen in hospice and in nursing homes. So we support her, we support Kay in that choice, if that is her choice. And sometimes that's...
I don't think it's completely choice for her. She's had trouble with sores in her mouth, which has made it difficult for her to have anything that's not liquid. So,
and there's treatments for that. I mean, and that's one of the sadder things you'll see is the family is desperate to have the family member not die, so they'll put them on intravenous supplements, or they will put a feeding tube down their nose and put boost and supplements through their nose to keep them alive. And some of these people are comatose. They're not conscious. I mean, you have to wonder where your priorities are.
Kay has been very clear about what she wanted and did not want. And the family's been supportive of her. Initially, some folks wanted her to come to Michigan for her hospice care, so that she'd be closer to the rest of the family. But she wanted to be in her own home in Illinois. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to wanting to finish your life in your own home.
It's kind of your choice. Hopefully, it's allowed to be your choice. And make it your choice. Please pay attention when they ask you about a living will or a DNR or any of those legal papers that you fill out when you don't really need them. But if you have a living will and you become incapacitated and unable to make decisions, then someone else is going to make the decisions for you. So if you do that ahead of time, if you tell your legal representatives and just fill out the living will, then you don't have to worry about what happens. And there are all kinds of ramifications. You can have full DNRs, you can have DNR with arrest. It's not like if you have a do not resuscitate and somebody you start coughing and can't breathe, they let you die. They have do not resuscitate, which means they don't go to any heroic methods. They don't intubate you, they don't shock you, they don't do compressions and break all your sternum and break all your ribs, because resuscitation is a violent, dangerous thing to do, and it's very painful if you do survive it. So it's nothing you want to enter into lightly. So if you have any questions, come talk to me later. I've got all that information. All right. Yes?
Just light a candle for two friends, actually. A friend, Marilee, who's in the hospital. She took a bad fall at a mutual friend's, Roger's, funeral last week. And also a candle for Roger. He was quite the philanthropist in Dayton and will be greatly used.
Okay. Marilee's in the hospital?
That's right.
And Roger's in the ground.
That's correct.
So our thoughts, prayers, our hearts and minds with both Roger and Marilee. Anyone else?
Light a candle for Denise, she's with us.
Yes.
Don't forget that.
A candle of joy for Denise. Hope your knee is doing well. I want to thank you again for encouraging me to do my hip, because it's made a big difference in my life, and a big difference indeed. So, right. One more candle, if there's nothing else. For those thoughts, prayers, those fears, those desires that you don't seem to be able to share out loud. If you need to, feel free to come to anyone in this church. We will do whatever we can to help you. All right. The message, work I cannot accomplish.
Thank you for inviting me back here to New Madison. I always enjoy my Sundays with you, including the drive up through New Paris. And it's kind of a picturesque drive. Normally I would say thank you to the El Dorado congregation for releasing me to come up here, but this is one of those Sundays when they don't meet. So I was free, totally free. Didn't need to arrange anything with them. God grant me the serenity to accomplish the things I can accomplish. Grant me the strength to bear the things I cannot accomplish. and the wisdom to know the difference. The words of prayer that you just heard, they're not really the traditional words to the Serenity Prayer. If you're paying attention, you'll notice they're a little bit different. What you just heard are the words I used when I recast the prayer in 2012, which was a challenging year for me in terms of work. Back then, I was the interim religious educator for a rather large Unitarian church in another community. It was a congregation that was badly disrupted by the departure of their beloved minister, who had to leave his ministry following a stroke. He had been there for 15 years. And his departure was followed by the resignation of the religious educator, who was his wife. They arrived as a team, and due to unfortunate circumstances, ended up departing as a team. When I arrived, committees were functioning, but everyone was kind of hived off and in their own little echo chambers where they were communicating in their own committee, but not between committees or between committees and the board. Communication regarding what was going on in religious education was haphazard. Many parents were not sure what the heck was going on, or when it was going on, or what to plan on. And my predecessor as a religious educator had been full-time, but I was hired half-time because of a major decrease in the budget. It was a job where the hours were just too small for the work that people expected me to accomplish. The need was great, and I was just a little bit too small. I also had a competing second job that was also taking up the other half of my week. So at the church, if there were 10 things that needed to be accomplished, but I knew I could only accomplish 7 of them, I was always in the position of needing to triage. Do you know that concept from medicine? Trying to figure out what needed attention first and foremost. So 3 things might not get done that week. What, I would ask myself, if I did not do it, would cause the largest immediate disruption? If I didn't do it, what would cause the largest immediate disruption? Move those things up the list. Which tasks affect the largest number of people? Move those ones up the list. And who's going to be ticked off by something I've left undone? Be strategic, because something will be left undone, at least so long as I keep a healthy boundary around being half-time employee. Now that last question is one that I really don't like, that question of like, so who am I going to tick off? There's a bit of cynicism in that calculus. But when you depend on a paycheck, and even ministers depend on a paycheck, I found I needed to figure out who was going to get ticked off by what could not get done, and how miserable they would be able to make my continuing work. So it's Labor Day weekend, friends. A good time to celebrate the work that people accomplish, and to also lift up the high value of human labor, and to also take a well-earned rest from our labors. But come Labor Day weekend, I'm always just a little bit haunted by the things that have been left undone. Those things left undone, they lurk in the background, even when people say, job well done. Well, yeah, on those things I did, but like I'm aware there's that other thing back there that I just didn't quite accomplish. And sometimes I'm still thinking about them when I'm enjoying a family cookout on Labor Day.
So even if you have never, ever been in the ministry, you probably have things that run parallel to my experience. At your home, those repairs that really ought to get done, but you didn't have quite enough time or energy, and maybe not the money to pay somebody else to do it for you. Or in your family, perhaps the knowledge that you cannot satisfy everybody's expectations, maybe at the holidays or at other times. Even when those expectations individually are quite reasonable, but when they get combined between multiple people, not so much. And then at your job, realizing that not every task you've been assigned can humanly be accomplished on time. And even in faith communities like this one, there may not be enough volunteers to do everything we want to do. So which ministries do we take up, and which ones do we lay down? We're standing on top of a nearly universal human dilemma. How shall we live, knowing that we just can't get it all done? The original Serenity Prayer, that was composed in 1932 by the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. It spread rapidly, often with no attribution, and to make things really confusing, Niebuhr had at least 3 different versions of it that he put out there. The original, which was longer, and the later version, which was taken up by AA meetings, that was the short version. So I'm not going to feel terribly guilty about tinkering with the wording in 2012, given that Niebuhr played around with it 3 different times, and it's floated around, completely detached from his name for almost 100 years. Well, back in 2012, sometimes to cope with the stress of my juggling act, having 2 different jobs, and one of them that was really too big for half-time, but half-time was all they could afford. Right before work, I would take a quick 20-minute hike on a trail near my home. 10 minutes out, 10 minutes back, get in the car, go to work. And one day while walking, the words, the short version of the prayer came into my mind. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. It was a good start for me, but not quite the help that I needed. It wasn't quite landing right on target. So the words each day would repeat in my head with each step, and the words began to evolve in my mind. God grant me the serenity to accomplish the things I can accomplish, those things I'm able to accomplish. It can be overwhelming to focus on everything at once. Everything. All those things on the to-do list at home or at work or the family commitments. And when I find the inner calm to really look at things, to decide upon what it is that I can accomplish, that work, even if a bit urgent, is granted a kind of serenity. It's a kind of focus that affirms, this I can do right now. And I'm going to do this right now. Let's pay attention to this thing right now. And let the rest sit in the background, on the back burner, until this thing is accomplished. And then I figure out the next thing to take up. Grant me the strength to bear the things I cannot accomplish. In any area of life, I have never accomplished everything that I set out to accomplish. It doesn't matter if the work was secular or ministry. It doesn't matter if it involved the upkeep of my home or things I wanted to do for my family. It didn't matter if it was financial goals or educational goals or health goals. Something has always been left undone. And our culture at times can be very unkind about those things left undone. And so people heap judgments upon one another. Unproductive, lazy, careless, stupid. And I will be the first to admit that sometimes those things can be true about me. But they are not true concerning everything that human beings do not accomplish. Sometimes, yeah, I made the wrong choice. Sometimes I was tired and I erred on the side of, I'll just do it later. But not everything that people fail to accomplish is the result of some kind of personal failure. In reality, none of us, no matter how dogged and productive we are, will get out of life with everything checked off the to-do list. You will not get out of life with everything checked off your to-do list. And so it takes a kind of inner strength to bear the things we could not accomplish, be it because of our own mistakes, or because we just didn't have the tools, or the time, or the know-how, or the circumstances that would allow us to complete everything on the to-do list. And the wisdom to know the difference. Doesn't it always come down to that? Finding the wisdom to know the difference? To find the difference between what is needed most and what is needed less? Or to find the difference between what you have the resources to accomplish and what you don't have the resources to accomplish? Or when you find the limits of your capacity and that point beyond which only lies exhaustion and burnout. It takes wisdom to know these and so many other differences that are at work in our work. No matter if that work is a job, or at home, or in the community, or at church. And so this is my hope. Dare I call it my prayer for you and for everybody in the world this Labor Day, that you might accomplish the blessed things that you can accomplish, whatever it may be it at a job, or in your home, or with your family, or at church, or even in your personal goals. And I hope that you can bear with inner strength the things you just could not accomplish. Even if you feel some personal disappointment, or receive some judgment from others. And best of all, may you discover the wisdom to know the differences at work in these things. The wisdom to know the difference. Amen. And blessed be. As I tell the El Dorado Church, one of the joys of preaching here is that the message is not completely left up to the preacher. And I'm not going to say it's unique to these two churches, because I've seen other churches do similar things now and then. But it is a rare gift, because very few churches engage in this kind of dialogue about life and faith and what it means to be human. It's also one of the gifts of being a smaller church, I'll remind you. Because big churches can't do this. It's too hard when you get too big to have these conversations. So I wonder this Labor Day, what's percolating inside your hearts and minds around the whole issue of work and Labor Day and the things that get accomplished and the things you just can't get accomplished.
What's the influence of the Buddhist thought? It seems, and I don't understand it, I've never really studied it, and I don't really understand it very well, but it seems the Buddhist thrust is to just eliminate those things, or eliminate most things, or a lot of things, or some things that should not be on the list. Does that make sense?
Possibly. So you're delving into an area of Buddhism I don't have a ton of experience with, but I do know that in Taoist thought, and there is this place where when Taoism and Buddhism touch each other, what you get is Zen Buddhism. In Taoism, there is this concept of do not strive too hard. And one of the lines in the Tao Te Ching is that he who stands on tiptoe never stands firm. He who sharpens the knife for too long blunts it. That there is a point where if you're working at it too hard, you're going to do something counterproductive. And there's also this concept of sometimes water takes what is the lowly path in its work. But water can wear down a mountain over time. And so sometimes it's the low-hanging fruit, the low path that over a long period of time gets the biggest result. Although right now I'm still thinking about the he who stands on tiptoe never stands firm. He who sharpens the knife for too long blunts it. Fill the bowl to the brim and you will spill it. All wisdom from the Tao Te Ching, very appropriate to thinking about work. And that point where we reach the point of overwork. I'll have to dig around in Buddhism for how... Because work is not bad in Buddhism.
That was always the question, because it seemed like it was the monk who was sitting in prayer and contemplation all day long and basically did no work, who was telling us that we are working, our goals are, we're working too hard to reach goals that aren't necessary.
That does get, so that gets seen at the public. I saw a documentary on Netflix. I think it was buried somewhere in a show called Chef's Table. And that episode featured a Buddhist monk, actually nun, in Korea. And there's this public life of the monks and nuns that people see, because occasionally they're outside the monastery with their alms bowls, looking for donations. That's partially because the alms free them up from other things so that they can engage in a life of prayer and contemplation on behalf of others who don't have that time. But when they are back at the monastery, there is work to do. They grow their own food. They mend their own clothing. They cook their own food. They sweep the steps. They do the maintenance on the monastery. And in some cases, they may even make crafts that people purchase. There's a Western equivalent. My husband sometimes buys soap from a convent. The nuns make soap. Others, actually some of my favorites are the monks who make beer. Can be enjoyed in-house and beyond the monastery. Actually, I think my husband told me Belgian beer actually originated with Belgian monks, the whole formula for it. Then it took off beyond the monastery. But work, for them, work has an element of worship. It is doing plain and ordinary things in Buddhism with great attention and compassion. In Christianity, with great compassion and a Christ-like concern for very ordinary things. I don't know if that helps, but you explore the concept. But
Thinking about it helps. Thinking about you're considering the entire task, not just the actual physical work that needs to be done, but the philosophical or the mental work.
The intent that you bring to the action.
Yes, if you let stress and outside influence push you to do something, that's, I don't think, considered appropriate.
It's hard to get, I don't know that you humanly can get completely free of outside influence and the things people tell you, but some of these spiritual practices of being mindful of your work and the intentions you bring can kind of undermine the negative influences that try to creep in from the outside. And that can apply to any of the tasks that we do, even if we're not doing them for a paycheck.
Good.
Margaret.
I could not wait to come and hear what you had to say today, because I think everybody knows that I just retired. Like, this is my first week of retirement. This week we just got done with. And I'm so confused, I don't know what to do, because I've always worked. I've identified myself through my work. I've put my self-worth on the results of my work. And work always came as equally important as just living life, and very often more so. And I look back on it now and I'm thinking, geez, why did I do that? I mean, I have no money. You know, I'm not wealthy, and I got laid off from my career that I gave 40 years to, and they just flicked me off like that. That was a waste. And went from there to housekeeping in a museum and a hotel, and that was a real adventure. I got a sermon I'm working on about that.
Good.
So the things you just said about, what was it, Tao or Buddhist or whatever it was, about fulfilling the bowl.
Yes,
standing
the
on
Taoist,
tiptoes.
it's part of the Tao Te Ching. There's a line in the Tao Te Ching that reads, fill the bowl to the brim and you will spill.
Yeah, the many things that you just said was an epiphany for me. And
see, inspiration still happens today. It doesn't require
Oh, yeah.
big lights coming out of the clouds and disembodied voices.
I knew I'd pick up something super valuable this morning, and yes, it has happened. So now I'll go home and
But
think
we
about
build
retirement.
We build the openings for those epiphanies when
Yeah.
we gather together in this process, this very human process of walking together on the spiritual journey.
Yeah, because I took a risk this morning. I'm not real, my vision isn't so good anymore, and driving is a little scary. I know when it was holiday weekend, I don't know if I want to drive an hour on the highway, but
And on a day when it's a little bit misty and there could be fog.
yeah, but I saw the topic, and it's like, yeah, that's worth the risk.
I will tell you something that my mother told me when she retired. My mom was an occupational therapist and retired at the age of 67. And she had worked before I was born until my younger brother was born, then went back to work when I was in 4th or 5th grade. And so a lot of time in this profession. My mom said the first month after she retired was incredibly disorienting. She said, I got up and I was like, what day is it? Like, what am I doing right now? Like, work created a rhythm for her. And over time, she built a new rhythm. She had to decide, I get to make choices about my time now at this stage in life. So what choices do I want to make? And she did make, she builds into her normal week. There's a day when she meets one of her friends for coffee. And there are other days when she volunteers at the library. She's like, what causes are important to her? What things does she want to learn? She gave a try learning, it's a little handheld instrument. You can put it on your lap. Dulcimer. She tried learning dulcimer. Have fun with that for a while. So take time. It'll take time to reorient.
I have no doubt that my life will be very full because I'm an intelligent woman who's interested in a whole lot of different things, and I'm passionate about causes and stuff, so it'll all work out. But, I was just changing this discussion slightly. I was in a checkout line at Meijer, and there was a couple ahead of me who was just really crabbing about how there's no cashiers and I have to wait forever and stuff like that. And it was a guy my age or a little older, and he was talking to a lady next to him. Well, people just don't want to work. It's not that there aren't any jobs, it's just people don't want to work. It's like, no, they just don't want to work for you. When I left the museum and had to find another job, I knew I wanted it to be a no-stress thing and a housekeeping thing. I love to clean, so that made sense. Getting online, these jobs that show up, I think there's a word for it. I think it's like wage baiting or something like that they'll advertise $14 an hour. So you go in and apply, and it's not 14. You can get 14 eventually, but you're going to start at 11.
Yeah.
And nobody can make a living at 11. And, it's so screwed up right now. And I found that out through my own experience.
Oh yeah, so you're gonna hear amen from me. I've waited tables when I was younger, and that will expose you to an enormous amount of cruelty from people who, one, expect their meal, but on the other hand, don't want to pay the people who actually get it to you. And what galled me the most coming from religious people, if I was scheduled to wait tables on Sunday, every now and then I would get someone who, in place of leaving me a money tip, would leave me a Bible tract on the table.
It happens in housekeeping too. Or they'll leave a penny.
And, you know, it's theft of labor, and incredibly dishonest. The realities are very complicated. In my other job, I work for a nonprofit that helps people who are facing eviction or utility shutoffs. And there's a whole spectrum of people I work with there. Some of them are people who just genuinely don't want to work. I met with a couple recently. It was a little unnerving. She worked in a factory, but she couldn't even tell me exactly what her wage was or how many hours she got. It made me wonder if she had a mild intellectual disability. Her boyfriend, who doesn't work, knew exactly how much she was making, how many hours she was scheduled, and what her wage was. But he doesn't work. We help them anyhow. But then I've had other people who, you know, if you're working at the pilot truck stop, and that's work that somebody needs to do, and your landlord in the middle of the lease says, hey, I sold the building and the new owner doesn't want tenants. Under Indiana law, then, you have 30 days to vacate. They were not planning on needing to vacate, and they've got to come up with 1 month's rent and a damage deposit that's also equal to 1 month. And they don't get their refund on their deposit on the place they had been renting until after they vacate, which is a little too late to pay the first month's rent and the new deposit. And so, yeah, you can't get by. I think in his case, he was making $11 an hour at the truck stop. And had the extra burden that the mother of his children had died of a drug overdose 2 years ago. So here he is, single dad working at a truck stop for $11 an hour with 2 kids.
Well, wherever you go today or tomorrow on Labor Day, and if you're going out to eat or something, give a great big tip to those people that...
Be generous to the people who work for you.
And a final remark I would like to make: never ever regret time you spent, work you've done, even if you consider it worthless, even if it was painful, even if you hated it. That is, everything you've been through is who you are now. If you hadn't been through it, you wouldn't be who you are now. Now, I realize if you don't like who you are now, that would be a problem, and I can't help you with that. But I'm hoping most of you like who you are now and don't regret the path you took to get here. As old people, we all say, boy, if I knew what I knew now, what I knew then, I would do things a lot differently. You didn't know then what you know now, so you couldn't have done things differently. So. Okay, that's my 2 cents. Our offering: if I had a hammer. Pete Seeger, who better could we hear from on Labor Day? If you have something to contribute, please put it in. This is Fish Sunday, and I think the fish bowl.
Yeah.
Yep, the fish bowl is there. The need is greater, I think I've heard many people say, because of the increase in the cost of food and everything. So the easiest thing is to give fish, just give them cash and let them buy beans and cereal, and don't bring the stuff that's been in your pantry for 6 years that you don't want to eat and you're trying to get rid of. That's just really worth it. All right.
Couple
closing hymn. Though I may speak with bravest fire. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free. Inward love. All right, extinguishing the chalice is 683. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its profession of faith divine living. By Theodore Parker. A postlude, where have all the flowers gone? Seeger, the voice of labor, end of love, where have all the flowers gone? All right, that ends our service. First Universalist in New Madison. Coffee cake, coffee, lemonade, all that is back there. Have a good week. Don't eat too much tomorrow on your picnic. The last picture here is, I threw up just out of interest, Death Valley. The highest temperature ever recorded in Death Valley, 134 degrees. That was in 1913. This week it was 128 degrees in Death Valley. The temperature on the floor of the valley, 201 degrees. The ground temperature is actually enough to burn your feet right off if you had bare feet. I'll give you a little background. The reason the temperature is so high is Death Valley is a very narrow valley. It's only 28 or 30 miles wide, surrounded by mountains on both sides. It's 280 some feet below sea level. The hot air goes up, but it can't get over the mountains, so it sinks back down again, and it just keeps piling up on itself. It never gets below 70 or 80 degrees at night, so it never really cools off. And the cool air can't get over the tops of the mountains to come back in and sink through. So it's a very interesting explanation of why Death Valley is the hottest place on Earth. Once again, USA, USA, USA.
Good to see you.
Good job, buddy. We'll see you off the big boss today. Really?